Before I begin, I feel it is necessary to point out that the news arm of the BBC has yet to retract, apologize, or otherwise address the deeply transphobic reporting it has engaged in the last few months. In a pinned comment down below, you'll find my original video on the topic, several videos from the YouTuber Sean, who has been ongoing in his pursuit of trying to get the BBC to own up to what they have done, and also a video from Laura Kate Dale showing the protests that have taken place outside of the BBC offices. While I don't feel any of the people behind Doctor Who are in any way responsible for this, I cannot in good conscience talk about a BBC-owned property without mentioning this first, until such time as it is properly redressed. Thank you. Look, this episode's so weird, I can't even think of a way to kick this off with a joke. Should have gotten a frog. And we have arrived at what I have gone on record before as being my favorite episode of Series 11 and one of my favorite episodes of Jodie Whittaker's time as the Doctor. It Takes You Away. Now, this is one that I don't really know what I do think that I think more highly of this than most people do. I don't think it's excessively maligned, except for one specific aspect that I know people have brought up to me repeatedly before. If you know the episode, and if you've been around in my comments, you know what it is. We'll get to it. But for the most part, I love this episode. I loved it first time I saw it. And honestly, I still like it a lot now. It's weird. And it's weird in a really unique and inventive way. I think I even said at the time that it reminds me of like the 1960s and 70s style sci-fi, the sci-fi of the mind. It reminds me of stuff like A Wrinkle in Time and that sort of weirdness that feels like it's partially a head trip, but also partially sci-fi. It has influences of things that feel more like traditional sci-fi, but also just weirdness because there's no reason that the universe wouldn't produce something this weird. The universe is huge. Yeah, some stuff's going to be really freaking weird. And I love that vibe. And this thing has it in spades across the board. Like pretty much as soon as they even get to the house, like there's a great atmosphere. It's shot very ominously, and there's a lot of harsh angles. Like the fact that the windows in that house are these triangles. It's already, or at least as someone from America, I don't know if that actual kind of design is something that's standard for Norway where it's set, but like for someone who's used to square or circular windows, seeing these really harsh triangles, yeah, no, it's a little off-putting. And it leans into that, and then the stuff with the mirror, it's like, wait a minute, what is going on? And then they go through that, and it's a cave system, and it's not that visually exciting, but it's also weird. They don't know where they are. They don't know what's going on. They run into this guy who they don't know if they can trust. I like Ribbons as well. And I like that he just takes everything for granted. They even ask him,
how did you even get here, Ribbons?
Always been here.
Is that true? Who knows? Maybe he's lying. Maybe he's literally spent his entire life here. Maybe he's only like a few hours old. We don't know how long this thing's been going on, but for as far as he's concerned, always been here. Does it make traditional sense? No, but it shouldn't. And then the moths, like this should give you an idea of how much I like this episode. Something like the moths, which are presented as basically like reverse moths, where they won't eat your clothes, but they'll eat your flesh. That's the kind of thing that I'm not going to say any other episode, but in a fair number of other episodes, I would have scoffed at. I'm like, that's kind of dumb. But you know what? You couch it in an episode with this much weirdness going on and this general vibe of like, wait, what? And I'll roll with it. And that's kind of the thing. Some ideas feel inherently silly, but honestly, most ideas, if you can couch them in a context where they fit, can work. And I feel like this is a story and a vibe and an episode where big freaking moths that eat skin instead of clothes actually work. So there you go. Part of me, I think I'm reading too much into this. I mentioned something like A Wrinkle in Time. The other vibe I get, at least for this kind of weirdness, is something kind of Douglas Adamsy, especially towards the end, with like the fact that an entire universe presents itself as a frog. That feels very Douglas Adams. Why a frog? Why not a frog? Is there any reason it should be anything other than a frog? No? Okay, then it's a frog. And that feels very Douglas Adams. It doesn't have his sense of humor, but it does seem to have his approach to absurdity, which is sometimes you explain the weirdness and sometimes you go, okay, why not? And the reason I bring that up is because I'm probably reading too much into this, but the fact that it opens in Norway and they bring attention to what Graham identifies as a fjord.
Ah, nice fjord. That is a fjord, isn't it?
And knowing that fjords kind of feature a bit in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because it was the part of Norway that Slatty Bartfast worked on and was really proud of and won an award for doing fjords. I don't know. I hope that was a subtle little Douglas Adams reference. I don't know if it was. I'm going to choose to believe it was, regardless of the reality. But I've just kind of been talking vibe. And like, there you go. I love the vibe of this thing. Absolutely adore it. Still, even now. Love it. So, what about the rest of it? Well, I think the character work in here is actually pretty good. It's debatable whether or not some of the stuff that's been done here should have been kind of more carried over across more of the episodes. I think Graham is kind of the big question there. I do feel that within the confines of this episode, his just conflict and his being torn up about encountering what, as far as he is concerned, is Grace, that what that does to him and how hard that is for him to be around.
Don't do this to me.
I think Bradley Walsh sells that really well, this sadness, this missing her, and the pull and the allure of that. I think there's an argument to be made that they kind of let the impact of Grace drift off after Roundabout Rosa was the last time I remember the mentions of her really standing out to me. There were probably a few others since then, but like the fact that they haven't stuck in my head, that's kind of telling. But at the same time, I do feel that this does work within those confines. And again, Yaz and her interactions with Hannah, again, sort of feel like leaning on the idea that she is... Calling Yaz a people person feels like an overstatement, but she's used to just sort of getting people comfortable with her, trying to put them at ease. I like how awkward Ryan is around her. And it kind of brings in his baggage about his own father in a way that doesn't feel expositional. It shouldn't be done as exposition at this point. We know some of the deal with his father at this point, but it does, feel appropriate to the situation. Given his baggage, out of the four of them, he's going to be the one who's going to suggest the possibility maybe her dad just ran off. And it also makes sense for Hannah to resent him for that. I really like the doctor, writing out a message to Ryan and claiming, here, I just drew you a map, so that she could relay information to him without Hannah, who is blind for all intents and purposes. She does say she can kind of see light if she's close to it, but for all practical purposes of the narrative, she is blind, and that's a way to relay the information. But I also like that Hannah is not dumb. She knows what it sounds like when someone writes words. She knows that it's not a map. And I think that she's well done. I don't love the name of this other universe thing being the Solutract. Like, again, Chibnall, these names, man, your alien being names suck. They really do. But I just kind of like, again, the weirdness of this idea of this universe that is lonely, basically. Like, it just wants to not be alone. But the problem is, by the nature of its existence, it cancels things out when brought in contact with our universe. It wants to have someone else there, but doing so starts to crumble reality. There's a melancholy and a sadness to that I also think feeds into the fact that it brings people on board by presenting them with a loved one that they've lost. I think that this thing, while it may not have lost a loved one in the same way, this thing feels alone in the way that people like Graham and Eric feel alone, and is calling out to them, offering a solution to their loneliness in order to satisfy its own need to fill that void. I really enjoy all that. There's a ton of like really interesting tiny moments just in terms of the visual presentation of things as well. But also there's like some cool little story touches as well. I kind of like the fact that the dead people in this other universe, they know they're dead. They're not trying to pretend otherwise. They know this makes no sense, but they're not trying to appeal to reason. They're trying to appeal to emotion. They don't have to make sense. They just have to be appealing enough to make people stay. There's a few really good lines. Ribbons gets one.
Information is sadly so expensive. You don't have such credit.
And there's another line later on, I think it was from Yaz.
When you put it like that, it sounds like a trap.
And those are lines that are accomplishing pretty basic stuff. You know, Ribbons laying out, you're going to have to give me something to get what you want from me. And, you know, them saying, I think we made a mistake coming here. It's, you know, it's a trap. But they're just good lines used to relay those things. I like that the doctor gets the Solutrak to let Eric go because she basically sells herself as a better companion to this entity than these people will ever be. I like that the doctor seems to convey a sense of genuine regret at leaving this thing alone. She does seem to really feel bad about it, and part of me wonders if the universe wasn't going to completely come apart from her staying there, would she have stayed? Maybe not forever, but I think part of her definitely wanted to, and that comes across in the performance. So this is another instance where I feel like Jodie Whittaker not only gives some really good presentation in terms of how she handles the doctor, what pulls the doctor in, what intrigues the doctor, what latches into her brain and hits her in the two hearts, but also like it's just better material than she's often given. This is not expositional stuff. This is emotional storytelling. These are emotional moments and she does them real well. But I set aside something at the start. So we need to talk about Eric. Eric is the father. The father who, in an effort to have more time with his dead wife, left his child alone for days in a house, and not only left her there, but set up this sound system to create scary noises outside and frighten her out of the idea of leaving.
I'm gonna hit him.
No, you're not. I am.
Now, I've seen people complain that the episode doesn't properly grapple with what he did. And I've had multiple people now try and throw it in my face, specifically the fact that I am a self-avowed lover of this episode, but I deeply hate The Idiot's Lantern, which has a father character who is an absolutely atrocious human being, is expelled from the house, but then gets reached out to almost immediately by the son at the encouragement of Rose, and it's treated like a good thing. And I deeply loathe that aspect of that episode. And it's an episode I don't like anyway, but that is what makes it my single most hated episode of Doctor Who I've ever seen. I find that legitimately dangerous. And while I will make no excuses for Eric, these are not equivocal. So if you want to know why I'm mad about The Idiot's Lantern, but I'm not mad at this, it's because Idiot's Lantern frames reaching out and keeping contact with a demonstrably toxic, cruel person is a good thing. It frames Rose's advice for this young boy to immediately reach out, not even be like, reach out to him in a week, see how he's doing. Like, no, he literally is walking down the street from just being expelled from the house, rightfully so, and she says, go to him.
Tommy, go off, Glenn.
What for?
He's your dad.
No, that is dangerous. That is not what is presented here. Nobody is saying to Hannah or anybody else, you should forgive him. Now, it is correct to say that it doesn't really properly grapple with how bad it was what he did. About the only person who really properly seems to have a good vibe on that is Ryan, and even Ryan by the end isn't really talking about it anymore. So I will grant that this is a problem and it is under-examined. However, Eric, while deeply selfish.
I know I stayed away from Hana too long, but I kept thinking, what if I go and I can't come back?
And I mean really selfish, is not actively cruel. The father in Idiot's Lantern was actively cruel and directly harmful. Eric is selfish and negligent, neither of which are good things. But between that and the framing of the Idiot's Lantern that reaching out to a person like that is a good thing, like actively encouraging an abuse victim to mend the bridge with their abuser, no. That is not equivocal to the mistakes of this episode. And this episode does make mistakes. Now, I'm done comparing to the Idiot's Lantern because I don't just want to feel like I'm defending this because it's not as bad as that. Because it isn't. But also, yeah, this doesn't really properly grapple with this. It is brought to his attention and he makes his excuses. Nobody defends what he does, which is good, because it's pretty indefensible. But it also seems like nobody's really going to hold him to account to that. Hana is just too happy to see him. And while he says, they're going to move back to the city, like, well, that's good. She won't be stuck in a friggin' cabin with no access to help anymore. So that's a good thing. But it becomes one of those things where I think the main thing, honestly, this probably could have been largely, at least to my satisfaction, addressed with just a tiny tweak. Have him not be gone for as long. Still have him like establish to her the sounds outside and that's all fake and like, but he set that up and like started talking about, oh, there's a thing out there like weeks ago, but he's only been gone like 2 days. Or even beyond that, if you really want to go light on it, because this episode doesn't seem to want to grapple with this. If you're not prepared to grapple with this, just have it be that time doesn't work the same. Just have them get there and he goes, wait, it's been how long? I thought I've only been here for like 5 hours. And if you still want to hold his feet to the fire, you could have someone like Yaz come out like, you left your daughter alone for 5 hours. And, you could still hold it to it, but it would be less egregious. And again, this is not to say that any of it's okay. But at this point, having him gone for like 4 days or whatever it is, it's the fact that it's not grappled with is distracting to the point that it takes away from all the other stuff that this episode does that I really, really, really love. And while I still feel that all that stuff holds up, even with this issue, I will absolutely cop to the fact that it is an issue, but I don't think it's that difficult to tweak. You got to tweak the timeline to make it so that it's not so egregious that the fact that it goes largely unaddressed doesn't become as big an issue. Because as it currently stands, it is an issue. But I think the fact that it would be fixable with a minor tweaking as opposed to, I know I said I was done comparing it, but I'll do it one more time, as opposed to, say, The Idiot's Lantern, where you have to completely chuck the idea of this boy reaching out to his abusive frickin' father. So, while I am not going to defend Eric as a character, good grief, no, I don't see the same potential for damage in what's presented here versus what happened there. And as a result, I'm not saying I'm forgiving of this aspect, but it doesn't ruin what I love. And what I love about this episode, I still love, even on a rewatch. It takes you away. You've seen it lately? You rewatched it? What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills, enables me to do this as my job. Any amount you can help me out there is greatly appreciated. But even if you can't, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell. I don't tell people to do that, but go ahead, hit the bell if you feel like it. But even if you don't worry about it, because what's important and what I want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Hey, end credits time, which means I need to shout out some patrons. This time I'm going to be shouting out Robin Moore, Zubin Litfala, Tarak, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Imudelki, Leo the Boy, TT, Fernobulax the Poodle, Zach Paul, Eidolon, Tracy Scrabbit, Vincent Paul Bartolucci, Angry Kasparov, Toku BL Huvian, Adam RDL Taylor, Shane Ross, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. You want to hear me mispronounce your name? Check out rewards on the Patreon. Thanks for all your support.